I'm the senior curator here at MAM and have been working on setting up this show. We're really pleased to have all of you here, especially all you representatives of the various city and county fire and police departments here. I understand a number of you were actually involved in the cleanup at Ground Zero. We're very honored to have you here. This exhibition is occasioned by coming together of two things. One, of course, the 10th anniversary of 9/11, and the other is a gift of the 24 photographs that you see upstairs. They are part of a unique, literally unique, there's only one, set of 500 contact prints that the artist made in 2006 at the 5th anniversary of 9/11. And they were made especially to go out to museums all around the country. A group of collectors bought them and is now beginning to distribute them to museums across the country. And we're very honored to be the first ones to receive one of these gifts and the first ones to display them. The photographs that are on view upstairs are what are called contact prints. That means they're exactly the same size as the negatives they're made from. So there's no enlargement, no fuzziness, no distortion. So they may be small, but if you look at them closely, you'll see that they're incredibly detailed. Joel Meyerowitz, the photographer who did them, used a big, old-fashioned wooden tripod-mounted camera that gets incredible detail. So if you look closely at them, you will be well rewarded. Joel Meyerowitz was the only photographer on site for the duration of the 9 months of the cleanup after 9/11. You'll notice that there are no images of the 9/11 attacks themselves. He was in Cape Cod when he first heard about it. But these span the entire 9 months that followed until the last column was hauled off of the site. Immediately after 9/11, Ground Zero was declared a crime scene. No press was allowed on the site. But Meyerowitz was convinced that if there were no pictures, in his words, there would be no history. And so he very doggedly sought and got permission with the help of sympathetic officials, both off and on site, to photograph there. The photographs document the efforts of those who, in Meyerowitz's words, faced that tragedy head-on day after day and did what they could to set things right. I think that's a really telling phrase, to set things right, because I think that's really what inspired everyone who was there. The images, I think, give you a good sense of the harrowing job that was involved. It was both brutal, dangerous, and emotionally wrenching, but also exceedingly delicate, meticulous, and required extraordinary patience and dedication. Meyerowitz said about a group of the detectives that he became particularly close to from the arson and explosion squad. He said, "They've seen it all and heard it all, and out of their experience comes humor, wisdom, courage, hard observation, and genuine tenderness." And that's something that I suspect can probably be said of everyone who worked on that site. So in recognition of these contributions, all the police and firemen who worked on the cleanup of Ground Zero, and also who put themselves on the line every day, The museum will be free to all public safety personnel, police, firefighters, and military personnel and their guests throughout the run of the exhibition. And we hope you will bring your friends and family back to see it often. And on 9/11 itself, the exhibition in the museum will be free for everyone. And I now want to introduce Jose Garcia, our Director of Government Relations, who will present our featured speakers.
Thank you, Peter. Before I ask three people to join me at the podium to speak, I'd like to recognize a couple of people that are in the room. Number one, Luis Garcia, State Representative, who is also a retired City of Miami Beach Fire Chief. And there are other chiefs here, and so I would like to recognize Chief John Gilbert from the village of Key Biscayne Fire. Chief Virgil Fernandez, Hollywood Fire Rescue. City of Miami Police Assistant Chief Richard Blum. And Chief Mike Overton, Hialeah Police, but here actually representing the Miami-Dade Police Chiefs Association. And now I'd like to introduce two of our speakers, David Downey with Miami-Dade County. He is Assistant Chief from Fire Rescue, and Freddie Fernandez, Deputy Fire Chief for the City of Miami. We will also hear from Lieutenant David Walters of the Florida Task Force 2, Urban Search and Rescue. And so those will be our three speakers, but I also know that many of you were involved in the search and rescue. And we would like to invite any of you up after the three speakers, any of you up who wish to say a few words. Thank you. And now, David.
Okay, thank you, and I'll be brief. I want to thank everybody for having us here and the special recognition that comes with this exhibit. On behalf of not only Miami-Dade Fire Rescue and Florida Task Force 1, for which I'm a part of, but also the National Search and Rescue System. I represent the 28 teams of the National Search and Rescue System, all of which participated in the events of September 11th. We want to thank you all for the recognition and the support, the continued support. I think exhibits like this are very important so that those that weren't around during those tragic events can get a small glimpse of what had happened, and for those of us that lived through it, remind us, and as the slogan goes in the fire service, because we lost 343 of our brother firefighters, many of which were close personal friends. They also had a search and rescue team, just like ours here, that will never forget what happened. And it's events like this that will help us remember that we have to remember the sacrifices that took place. And I really appreciate you all having us, and thank you very much.
My name is Lieutenant Dave Walters, City Miami Fire Rescue and Florida Task Force 2. I'd like to thank you all for coming here. I think this is very important that these images are viewed by people so that we don't forget what happened that day. I think look around the room and see the people that we went up there with us. We all left a little bit up there, each and every one of us, but we brought something back, and it's the images that you see up there are some of the things that we brought back with us. But I think it's very important that this sort of thing continues on in the future. And thank you once again for being here, and thank you for the opportunity for us to see this.
Good afternoon. afternoon to everyone. I'm Freddie Fernandez, Deputy Fire Chief for City of Miami Fire Rescue, and it's a pleasure to represent our department here today on behalf of Chief Maurice Kemp. We are the sponsoring agency for Florida Task Force 2, and I would be honored to let you know that there's 27 agencies that participate there, all sorts of specialties. We have doctors, engineers, K-9, and we're very proud of our team and all the efforts that they do, and I'd like to acknowledge all of those folks at this time as well. In addition, I'd like to take this opportunity to invite everyone to a very special event we're hosting at the City of Miami Training Center. That event's going to occur on September 10th, and we're able to secure an I-beam, steel beam, actually from the 911 towers, from the Twin Towers, and we're going to be displaying that in our fire museum. So Lieutenant Iggy Carroll here, if anybody wants more information, more details about that event, we'd like to invite everyone there to that event. So I'd like to thank you again for being here on behalf of the Fire Chief Maurice Kemp. I'd also like to introduce two special people at this time that were task force leaders of the task force that went up there to New York at the time, Chief Virgil Fernandez and Chief John Gilbert.
Good afternoon. Again, John Gilbert from the Village of Key Biscayne, but on September 11, 2001, I was also a task force leader for Florida 2, along with Virgil Fernandez. We took 78 individuals from 27 different agencies up to New York City. We came back, and the things that stick with me the most, and are still somewhat of a memory today, were the fact that we went up with great expectations. And although we didn't and were not able to fulfill the initial expectations of being able to find survivors and rescue them, what we were able to do was bring to a community, to a large city, to the largest city in the world, a feeling of security and a feeling of that they could weather this terrible event and move forward. And that has always remained with me. 10 years later, it's hard for me to look at New York City and remember those days when folks would come to us and say they could never, ever recover. They did. We played a very, very small part of that, but I think that foundation and that basis back during the 14 days that we were there was the beginning. So I'm very, very humbled and honored to have been part of the team. We came back with no injuries. That was significant because that was an extremely dangerous site. But again, we would have given all to be able to change the outcome of at least 343 of our brother firefighters and some 3,000 other individuals that, on that particular day didn't deserve what happened to them. So I represent the team, but more importantly, I am very, very humbled to be in front of you, and I want to thank you for the exhibit. I have had the opportunity to see the exhibit. The exhibit is wrenching from the standpoint that it tells us all exactly what we saw those days, but it also reminds us that we can move forward. We did move forward, and we will be stronger for it.
Good afternoon, and I'm Virgil Fernandez. I was also one of the task force leaders, and I haven't seen the exhibit, so I have no reaction to it. I am proud to be here among some of the people that I consider the bravest that our profession has, and being there with them, the resolve that they had to look for fallen victims, whether they were brother firefighters, police officers, or actually victims that were there. I can tell you that our community is well represented, and when it comes to brave people, my definition is standing probably right next to you. Now I will tell you that part of the things that saddens me a little bit is, 10 years ago, this profession was held in very high esteem, and nobody ever looked at our pension. Nobody ever looked at a salary. And I will tell you that when you hear everything that you hear, there's people that will never forget, and they can't forget because they're living with part of their New York experience with them. So keep that in mind, and that's probably the stuff that nobody tells you. Anyway, like Chief Gilbert, I'm humbled to be here, and I can't wait to see the exhibit. Thank you.
remember someone else on September 11th. Something that we know is an extremely sorrowful day, September 11th for Miami-Dade Fire Rescue, that on that same day, approximately 8 years prior to that, our Aerial 34 in Miami-Dade Fire Rescue responded to a multiple alarm fire, and we had our lieutenant that didn't come back. Lieutenant Dewey Henry died on September 11th, 8 years prior to that. So it's not just paying honor to our 343 New York Fire Department brothers, but also the 344 Lieutenant Dewey Henry.
Would anyone else like to say a few words? If not, I will take a moment of personal privilege and say that I want to recognize and thank all of you, the police and the firefighters that are here. You put your lives at risk each and every day for us. And for that, I commend you, I thank you, and I applaud you.